To the Central Mountain Small Business Development Center webinar. I don't think we started. Can anybody hear? No, I don't. Okay, I'm going to do it again. Ready?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear us?
Jamie, it says that the attendees are still on hold. You need to click Start Broadcast now that you started the webinar.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Small Business Development Center's new webinar. We have Lori Benson, Heather Barron, and myself, Jamie Bilsbach. Can you all hear us? If you could raise your hand. Or Karen, I'm going to unmute you. Just can you hear me, Karen? Ooh. I am not sure they can hear us. If you could raise your hand. Oh, we got hands raising. Yay! This is my first go-to webinar, and so it's always interesting to start teach an old woman new tricks. But welcome to the Central Mountain Small Business Development Center. This is our first webinar, and we're so glad that you were able to join us. We are part of a network of 15 centers in Colorado, and the Central Mountain region covers Chaffee, Park, and Lake counties. And we offer free consulting that's confidential with local consultants. We have 13 in our region. And then we also offer access to capital and financial resources. So we've been working with a lot of small businesses on the EIDL programs and the PPP put out by the federal government. And then we do training curriculums like this webinar today. All of you are muted. And if you aren't, if you can make sure you do mute yourself just for a while, we do want to hear from you soon, so that it'll help the quality of our presentation. And we really invite you to have not only question and answers, but share your comments and concerns. And so please put those in the Q&A section. The Central Mountains Small Business Development Center's mission is to be dream-focused and business-minded. And with the worldwide spread of the COVID virus, all of us are experiencing great change in our lives and in our career paths. And most likely, we believe that if we want to survive our new world, we need to pivot and evolve authentically and swiftly. Obviously, financial resilience comes into play, and we have a lot of business-minded training curriculums already in place, such as our New World training series. And we also offer financial support and consulting. But this webinar is focused on the dream-focused aspect of our mission. And we believe that in order to be successful in this new environment, survival will not only take a tenacious spirit, but must come from an authentic heart. Hence why I invited Lori and Heather. This webinar is focused on the power of purpose. And I'm going to present the first section, which is the power of purpose. And then Lori is going to share about leading from the heart. And Heather is going to share about entrepreneurial authenticity. And I'm very excited to have both Lori and Heather join us. The plan with this New World series is that it's a series of 7 webinars, one each month over the next 7 months. This is the first one. And in each webinar, we'll have blogs from 3 different presenters. So myself, thank goodness, won't be presenting every webinar. We'll have unique opinions about how our new world is unfolding and experts to come in and join us. They'll write a blog, and that'll come out over 3 weeks, and then it'll culminate with the 4th week being the live webinar. The journey begins today, and we really need you to participate with your questions and sharing your stories. So we've set aside about 30 minutes after our presentations to hear your stories and to answer your questions. Redefining one's purpose often comes during times of great loss. Purpose can unfold profoundly during loss. I know I personally have gone through these really awful life experiences where loss occurred and change had to happen. And I can share my story, but I'd rather hear yours later. I think purpose unfolds when loss happens because change is inevitable. And I found that the more I fight the change, the more difficult it makes it for myself and for those around me. You can ask my husband that. I think we can get stuck in the initial stages of the process of loss and grief. And so if you think about you're going through this new world experience with the COVID pandemic, think about if you've gone through these stages of denial and anger and then bargaining and blame. I'm very good at bargaining. And then depression. And we kind of get stuck in those stages where we really need to move through to acceptance and finding the true meaning of ourselves and our lives and our purpose. Yet all of us want to get back to normal, or I hear so many people saying, I just want to reopen and get back to normal. And that's natural for us to feel, but until we get to acceptance and moving past and through it, we will remain stuck. Loss and change and the processing of these stages of grief really allow us incredible opportunities for rebirth, renewal, and to refocus on self-awareness. The chance to come out stronger and to be more resilient, even more content and happier in the simplicity of living life with an open heart. That is one of my stories of how I realized that in my early 50s. Change forces us into new forms of awareness and understanding, bringing out the strength within us that we maybe didn't know we had, but it's what allows us to thrive. It seems that when we get into the dark levels that many of us call rock bottom, the moment we think we cannot go any further, that's when something beautiful happens. Our true essence emerges and insights to our calling become clearer. When we lean into change, hope begins to arise. Self-awareness processes naturally begin to stir, and one heart opens, and the fundamental desire to live profoundly presents itself. However, one internally or externally defines these moments, they could be the moment in time in which more of our essential nature or true character come out. Poignantly, with COVID-19, just about everyone in the world is going through these internal and external stages of grief and change. It's life-altering times where we are really kind of all losing what we held dear in our lives, whether it's a loved one that passed or the financial devastation of our businesses. These are devastating losses, and hence why we go through the grief process. But I always think there's a silver lining, especially when we are forced to face change right in the face. And that is that it allows us to individually and collectively tap into our heart-based authenticity, which is why Lori and Heather are here to share their thoughts on how we can explore those wonderful feelings and opportunities. And that's where the power of purpose resides. So I'd like to think that there is a silver lining and there is hope. And we're going to share today some of the ways to address that. In Richard Leder's and David Shapiro's book, they wrote the books, The Power of Purpose, which we'll talk about, Work Reimagined, and Life Reimagined. In their dedication in Work Reimagined, they shared the quote, "To all those who have uncovered their calling, finding a living worth living." Think about that, a living worth living. But maybe you will say, oh my gosh, I've already been living my purpose. I had my business based on purpose, and then COVID stopped me in our tracks. But this change and this new world experience really allows us to reconceive ways to pivot and grow and connect more thoughtfully with our family, with our customers, and with our community. I think in Chaffee Lake and Park County, we've seen an amazing emergence of community support. The bottom of this slide has a podcast that was just produced May 6th by Richard Leder that further defines what I'm talking about. Last November, I had a chance to go on a retreat with our small business development center networks to create this new esprit de corps and team alliance with also the representatives from the rural area of Office of Economic Development and International Trade, and a new group called Startup Colorado, which is very vibrant in supporting the entrepreneurial spirit and offering access to funding and training. Just brilliant, brilliant people. And Delaney Keating is the director of Startup Colorado. And in November, here we are, none of us knew each other. For me, I was a brand new center director, just started in August. And she came out with these calling cards, and you can see a picture of it up on the slide. It was a deck of cards that was 52 cards, and I thought, what the heck? You know, because I can be pretty insecure. So I was very curious about these cards and what they were going to make me do. And it was a brilliant process. And I have these cards in our office, so I'd love to share them with you. If any of you have an interest, just email me. But the cards take you through what sort of your gifts are. And whether that's creating things or writing things, seeing possibilities, fixing things. And so you go through this 3-step process of the calling cards, and your calling is actually unfolded. Richard also has the napkin test, which I have a picture with the coffee cup on the left, and in our downloads, it'll take you to a step-by-step process to try that napkin test. And really all it's doing is showing your gifts and aligning that with your calling. And it's a great way to understand where you're at least at the moment. And our callings can change. I suspect Lori and Heather can talk about how their callings have changed throughout their life. I think I'm not only on my 4th lifetime, but my probably anyway, please use these tools. We also have a purpose checkup that you can download. And then Richard has some wonderful videos besides the podcast that I talked about. Next, Greg Braden, which I think Lori might be talking about a little bit, had this amazing quote when I was putting together this presentation. And he really captured what I'm trying to say or babbling about. And his quote is, "We've heard the adage that only constant in life is change. We've also heard that change can be the most stressful experience we face in our life, and that the stress of change that biologists tells us is the trigger of new ways of thinking and living, the evolutionary transformation that makes us better people, creates stronger families and communities, and ultimately promises the survival of our species. The formula is clear. The bigger the shift, the greater the transformation. Lori's going to talk about just how great that transformation can be in us, and I certainly can see it. I can't wait to hear her story. He continues with, we're living the shift from creating our lives based upon the way our minds see the world. I have a monkey mind. I'm always in my head. To a new world way of thinking, of living based in the way our hearts and our minds sense the world. So with that, I would like to introduce Lori Benson, who is the founder of Inward Bound Leadership. Lori works with women and men who are curious about the role they are here to play in the world, and whether they already sit in positions of leaders of businesses and industries, or are just stepping into what leadership is for themselves or for their families and their communities, and what that might look like. It all begins with inner awareness. She knows the road to change begins with heightened self-awareness. We must create change in ourselves before we can change the world. Besides being the founder and running Inward Bound, she also, with her husband Joel Benson, owns BB Roasteries, they were the founders of that as well, and the Village in Buena Vista. So please help me welcome Lori Benson.
Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Thanks for pulling all this together and inviting us here today. It's fun to look through the list of attendees. I see that we have some from outside of Colorado as well. So thanks for everybody for joining and welcome. I'm resisting the urge to call out some of you and say hello because I want to say hello to everybody. And I love that, Jamie, you led into this talk with a Greg Braden quote. If you haven't had an opportunity to see Greg Braden live or to watch any of his videos, he's a pretty fascinating man because he is a scientist and he lives at that intersection of science and spirituality. So I take deep dives into what he's sharing and can go down a rabbit hole sometimes. It leads many places. So I would recommend, if you have a little time and space, to dive into that rabbit hole. He's pretty fascinating. So I do want to talk about leading from the heart today. And I truly believe that where we stand right now with failing economic, societal, and environmental structures is because we've forgotten how to lead from our hearts and instead rely almost completely on our minds for guidance. This isn't something new. There's a prophecy that comes out of the Peruvian Amazon called the eagle and the condor, and it shares wisdom and helps us understand or create a point of reference for where we are today. So if you aren't familiar, and for those of you who know me are really familiar, so here we go again. The prophecy of the eagle and the condor is this. The eagle and the condor used to fly together in harmony and balance. And the eagle represents the masculine, the industrial, the thinking. And the condor is the feminine, the intuitive, and the heart. And the prophecy states that in 1490, we would begin a 400-year period in which the eagle would start to overtake the condor almost to the point of extinction of both. So in 1990, we entered the time of possibility and the time of opportunity to again come to that point of balance. So everything that I'm going to share today is going to come back a lot to the eagle and the condor, and the understanding that when I say masculine and feminine, I'm not saying man and woman. This isn't about the different sexes. It's about finding the balance of the masculine and the feminine within us all. We all tip in one direction more than the other. So all of the work of learning how to lead from the heart is moving us toward that point of balance and reconnection. And a little side note to that, I really believe that everything we're experiencing right now isn't because things are so crazy out of balance and we're here. I believe it's because we're here. And what we're experiencing and where we are and everything that we're feeling and the disruption and the pandemic and everything is because we're almost at that point of balance. And this is where our opportunity lies. And this is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. How do we step into a role that rises that condor to the place of balance so we all move together, or we all move forward together? So this prophecy, I first learned about this in 2012 when I was with my family in Costa Rica. We were with Indigenous from all over the world, and they all had varying versions of this same prophecy, but it was the eagle and the condor that really landed in my heart. And it changed the trajectory of my life. I took a deep dive into what it really meant and how we could step into the beauty, grace, and power of the condor, the heart wisdom. It also brings me incredible peace as we navigate this craziness to know that there are people walking the earth with us today who knew we would stand exactly at this point with two paths in front of us. So the first path leads us in the same direction we've always walked. It allows us to use the same structures and truths we've always relied on. The second path is the path of the heart, the path of the condor, the path of the feminine wisdom. On this path, we return to a place of deep knowing and trust, guided by our connection to our inner landscape, each other, and the planet. This second path brings a return to balance. We aren't looking for the extinction of all that was and all that currently is. We're looking for balance. The universe operates from a state of and is constantly seeking this state of balance. And when things tip so heavily in one direction, she shakes us up to try and right the ship. And we are being shook to our core right now. The beautiful news is that we have everything we need, and it's with us at all times to return to balance. All we have to do is learn or remember how to lead from our hearts. So there's an incredible organization that Greg Braden talks about quite a bit called HeartMath, and they've been working on techniques to do just this for years. How do we tap into our heart space and understand what it feels like when it's communicating with us? So they offer a meditation that I'm actually going to take you guys through today. So I'm going to ask you to be a little vulnerable with me, but nobody can see you. So the three of us are going to be vulnerable here for you. We'll demonstrate vulnerability for you. So if I can have everybody just sit comfortably, put your feet on the ground, feel that connection. Go ahead and close your eyes. And just find your breath. Feel the opportunity with each inhale and exhale, that opportunity to release and relax. See if you can slow your breathing down a little bit. Maybe inhale to the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then go ahead and bring your hand to rest on your heart. Just let your awareness drop to that point of connection. Find that heart space. And then while you're tuned in, holding your awareness right there, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. First question is, my heart, am I listening to Lori Benson? And then, my heart, is it the month of December? So you can go ahead and relax your hand and open your eyes. This is a space we aren't familiar with. There are many of us. Some of us are very familiar, but most of us operate and won't move through the world without this connection. And I'm going to go into that a little deeper. But the point of those two questions, they create a point of reference so you can maybe start to understand what a yes feels like coming from your heart and what a no feels like coming from your heart. So for me, a yes is actually like a fire on the front side of my heart. Everything activates. And a no is actually a tension or a pain on the back side of my heart. Some people see colors, some people hear words. It all just depends on kind of how we move through the world and what our strengths are. There is no right or wrong way to experience this process and this meditation. The goal, right, is to simply begin to understand how your heart communicates with you. One of the tools where you know it's coming from your heart and not your mind, if you ask a question as we progress further through this, and the answer is a long, rambling definition, you're up here again. You're not here anymore. What comes from our heart is very short and succinct, and it's there to just guide and inform and lead us along the way. So research and science have shown us that our heart has more firing neurons than our brains, and that our heart communicates more with our brain than the other way around. We just don't know how to listen. Scientists say that the heart is more than just a pump that we thought it was. It contains 40,000 neurons, an electromagnetic field 60 times larger in amplitude and 5,000 times more intense than that of the brain. Stanford and Oxford University state, the heart is a state of intelligent consciousness. What the mind sees, the heart feels. So Dr. Joe Dispenza is another friend and cohort of Greg Braden, and he has some powerful talks as well. And in one of his talks, quite a few of his talks, he talks about our 3 responses to the unknown. So we have fight, flight, or freeze. And it used to be that our distant ancestors would feel something in their body, right? An instinct or an inkling of danger, and then they would react. That was how we operated. What we felt in our bodies guided our actions. Then somewhere along the way, this shifted. We began relying on our brains to inform our bodies. In order to operate in this way, we needed to ignore the sensations and heart messages and listen only to the thoughts running through our minds, the analytical side of our being, the eagle. He goes on to share what this actually does to us on a physical level. So let's say you have a difficult conversation coming up at work or in your personal life, and you play out the different scenarios in your mind over and over. These stories that are feeding the narrative are all hypothetical at this point in time, but your body doesn't know that. It's almost like watching a movie on replay, and your body is experiencing the entire thing over and over and over, as if it were truly happening and playing out in live time. We're doing damage to ourselves instead of taking the right steps to having that meaningful conversation we think we're preparing for. So imagine if instead of playing out the different scenarios in our heads, we simply paused, centered ourselves in our body, connected with our hearts, and asked for direction or validation that the steps we're taking are the right ones. And then we truly trusted the response. The opportunity in front of us right now is that of the eagle and the condor. We're alive during a time when all the structures created under the masculine paradigm the eagle wisdom are crumbling. This isn't to say they're wrong. There simply was no balance of the feminine, the intuitive, the knowing. It's time to use a new language and move through the world in a new way. And the answers for how to do this will look a bit different for all of us and can be found in our hearts. So some of the questions, or words I should say, that I've grappled with in the past that have brought me a lot of freedom are around the words success and value. So the definitions we have for these words and the way they make us feel in our bodies were created under this old shift paradigm. I've sat with the definitions and asked my heart if they're true for me. And now I'm going to actually take you guys through this same little process that we just did and see where these live for you. So if you can just take a minute, hand over your heart again. Take some good breaths. Close your eyes. And pay attention to how you feel when I read this. So this is the definition of success from dictionary.com. Success, the attainment of wealth, position, honors, or the like. Notice how you feel. Now ask your heart, my heart, does this resonate with me? Notice what's being shared. Now ask your heart, my heart, what does success mean for me? How does it feel? What does it look like? Really pay attention to what emerges here for you. And if you want, you can take a moment to write down your response. If you're still writing, you can keep writing. But I want to do the same with value. So again, hand on your heart. Some good breath. Go ahead and close your eyes. And this time I'm not going to read the definition because I think we all have our own default definition based on our upbringings and experiences of what value means to us or what we think it means to us. So feeling that point of connection, I just invite you to ask, my heart, what does value mean to me? How am I valuable? And listen to what arises. Again, you can write down anything that comes up for you if you want. So when I first sat quietly and asked my heart what success was for me, the first word that came was peace. And not world peace, right? Or some huge answer that carried a lot of responsibility. Simply peace in how I move through the world. So this simple awareness created a huge shift. It gave me a reference point to come back to when I made decisions that lived too heavily in the wisdom of the eagle. This wasn't at all the word or definition I held myself up to when I wondered if I was succeeding at something. When I questioned if I was being successful in this world, peace was nowhere on that line of, or the bar, I guess the success bar, for lack of a better word. My default was from my societal and cultural training. not in what the truth was for me. It's really easy to rely on old definitions and structures because this is how we've been taught. Our education system, religions, corporations have all been created through the eyes of the eagle, under this predominantly masculine paradigm. They aren't wrong, they're just missing the balancing wisdom of the condor, the wisdom of the feminine, the wisdom of the heart. So the task in front of us is to lead in a new way, to create businesses and business structures that value heart-based leadership. And this begins with leading ourselves, learning how to be guided from our hearts. The entryway into this work is understanding how your heart communicates to you. I strongly encourage you to take a few minutes every day and listen to your heart the way we did in the meditation. Ask it a simple question and listen and feel its response. You're creating a new habit, a new way of moving through the world, and it takes a commitment. The payoff for this commitment, though, is life-changing. One day, it becomes second nature. As you move through conversations, make decisions, experience life, you feel the guidance of your heart. It's this guidance that will move us back into a place of necessary balance. Remind us of our interconnection with each other and all living things, and shift the trajectory of our current experiences. So this is our path forward, and fortunately, it already lives within us all. The wisdom of the condor is the deep knowing, the intuitive thought, the gentle nudge to hold our decisions and actions a little softer, bringing that balance into all aspects of our life and becoming the heart-based leaders the world's waiting for. This isn't something that we can step into on our own. Support is so important right now. Jamie, would you share the resource slide that I created? One of the beautiful parts of all this craziness that we're experiencing is that people, I've been blown away by how much people are sharing, and the resources that are accessible to all of us right now and the free resources that are accessible to all of us right now are huge. And I've actually had quite a people talk about resource burnout. They can't take anymore. So they don't want to do one more course or one more class. So if you're in that space, hold on to this information, and when you're ready to step back in, it's here for you. But I have a somatic awareness 5-day online course, super easy. Well, it'll challenge you, but it's simple, not very time consuming. That's free. It's linked there. Braden and HeartMath, who we've talked about here today, they're offering a free 90-minute opportunity to learn these skills on a deeper level for building resilience and listening to your heart. That's just become free. I think it's usually a $200 course or something along those lines. And then the third one that I share is from Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, who he wrote the book, The Return of the Feminine and the World Soul, which I wish I brought my copy just so I could show you guys, because every page of the entire book is underlined and highlighted and notes everywhere. It's pretty beautiful and powerful and very timely, even though he wrote it a while back. So if you don't want to sit and read an entire book right now, the link that I've shared here is to an hour-long podcast that he did talking about the highlights of the book. And it's pretty amazing and powerful. So thank you all. And Heather, I look forward to what you're here to share as well.
Thank you, Lori. That was really beautiful. And I think, Jamie, you're doing a little intro. Is that right?
I am, if you guys allow me. You both, you both could have done this without me, and I think I'd have been happy about that. I just want to share that after this session, we will be sharing the blogs that Heather and Lori wrote, as well as my blog. as well as this PowerPoint show and the recording and all the handouts. So thank you, Lori. And this is actually a quote from Lori's blog. Our next panelist, Heather Hagen. Hagen, how they're barren. That's pretty funny. On lots of different levels. Anyway, we'll share rationale and processes on how we can take our redefined heart power and purpose authentically and bring this into our business or nonprofit. Heather has been an integral life coach specializing in working with women on resilience, on mindset, on self-care for the past 12 years. I consider both Heather and Lori dear, dear friends, and I have used both of their life coaching support and continue to do so. But Heather also has a real dear spot in my heart because I thought I would never marry again after losing my late husband and found this wonderful, wonderful man, David Bilsbach. And Heather was our wedding officiant and did an amazing ceremony. So thank you, Heather, for that again. You can find more about Heather on luminouslife.com and on all the socials, Luminous Life Inc.
Thank you, Jamie. And I just want to throw in there is a luminouslife.com that is not me. So make sure there's a dash between luminous and life. If you go looking for me in particular, the other site's beautiful too. Maybe you'll find something there. But I'm luminous-life. And it was an honor to stand at the altar with Jamie and David. And they were really close to wedding number 100. So that made it extra special as an officiant. So one of the things I do besides marrying people is I facilitate ceremony, and weddings have a very special place in my heart. And that's what I'm most known for. Besides coaching. So it's an honor to see all of you. I wish I could see your faces, and I know we all feel that way. We're just such interactive people. And so I'm hoping that you can feel that sense of love that I'm feeling for this day and for this webinar. Jamie, thank you for organizing this, and Lori and Jamie both for teeing up, coming into what authenticity can look like as entrepreneurs. We hear different versions of what authenticity is, and I wanted to hear from other women what that means to them. So I put out a call to the masses, and we'll share some of those definitions. But first, I want to share this Brene Brown quote that really speaks to the heart of what I feel authenticity is. And she said, "Authenticity is a collection of choices we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and to be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let ourselves be seen." And as we talk about this idea of balancing the feminine and the masculine, I have a very strong masculine side. I learned that from my dad, who was a motivational speaker and salesman. And I watched him and saw how his sense of just owning a room when he would walk in and being very, assertive and outside of himself, how much that brought into his life compared to the softness that my mom expressed as a stay-at-home mom. And I grew up really devaluing her compared to him in this idea of what was successful. And so I can speak from what Lori was talking about very personally, because as I have found that sense of showing up in such a strong outward way, I've really had to learn how to soften inwardly. And not soften in the sense of weakness, but that softening that brings balance, so that I can hear what I do know to be true internally, which I watched my mom express all the time. She would know instantaneously what needed to happen. And then my dad would require, lovingly, her to describe why. Why do you feel that way? Like, where's that coming from? Give me some, data or something to prove that. And we would almost always circle right back to where we started, with mom's instant intuitive knowing of what to do. And I got to watch that unfold in a way that really brought that sense of balance that I have learned as I've gotten older. And so I do a lot of that in integral life coaching, of learning how to balance those, because we may have been shown culturally one way being better than the other, and we're getting an opportunity to bring that feminine more to the fore as women entrepreneurs and tapping into that. So being authentic, what does that look like? What's the definition of authenticity? So I asked a lot of women who cover the gamut of roles as far as what's successful and what's not culturally, and the definition that Lori gave us from the dictionary, that very one-sided version of success. But this is what I got: showing up, being the same regardless of my role, being the same person showing up in the same way regardless of what room I'm in, being honest with myself and others, listening to and trusting my heart, and as Lori said, leading from that place, being present, acting from a deeper knowing than my temporary emotions, tuning into my gut for guidance, and being true to what I know most deeply is true for me. There were a lot more responses to that question, but they all fell under those different categories. And when I looked up the definition for authenticity, the definition was the quality of being genuine or real. And at one point in doing research on this idea of being authentic or authenticity, there was the definition of going back to the original, the genuine article. And I love this because authenticity is not something we have to go out and learn how to be. It really is peeling back the layers to what's always been there. And Jamie talked about that calling and being in her 10th calling of having so many callings. And the word vocation comes from the Latin meaning to call. That sense of being called. How are we being called to show up with our work in the world? As Lori's email signature says, work is love made visible. Khalil Gibran says that. So this idea of vocation and what we're being called to bring forth into the world, that can show up as entrepreneurs in the products that we offer, the services that we offer, and being true to that. Now, I am an ideas woman, so I have a million ideas of how to make the world a better place, or what products I want to sell, or services, and I'm sure those closest to me have gotten tired of all that. Well, what if we do this? And just, that desire that I just stick with something. So if you are one of those people, then being authentic can really help, Lori. How many businesses have you owned? Yes, those different iterations. Calling and vocation, which is a beautiful quality to have, by the way, because that's where innovation really is going to come from, those ideas percolating up. But authenticity can help us to drop in to what is ours to bring forth, and probably 10 different, time frames of that, different chapters of our lives, different points where we will have something called forth in us that our family needs, our community needs, the world needs, or we just need to create to feel whole. So authenticity helps us get to that place of understanding that. And I'm gonna walk us through just 5 ways to help bring more authenticity into entrepreneurship. And I think Jamie, I see her looking at the slides and she's probably pulling that one up. This is included in the blog that she made reference to, that these are 5 ways that I've found to help myself be more authentic as an entrepreneur specifically. Now, these apply to us personally as well. So, you can't be one without the other, really. To be authentic, truly, you have to be authentic across the board. So you can't just be an authentic entrepreneur and then be a fake person. That's what I've found anyways. So just walking through these. First of all, a great exercise to increase authenticity is to get clear about your why. Why are you offering the product or service that you're offering? What is the why behind it? And identifying those core values of what matters at the end of the day. If everything goes sideways, how do you want to be showing up every day as you pursue your latest entrepreneurial project? So being an entrepreneur, usually there's a lot of new thinking that's constantly going on. How can I create a product? How can I make it better? How do I get it to the market? Who is my market? All of those pieces are part of being an entrepreneur. And so this idea of identifying those core values for yourself as an entrepreneur, and then running all of those crazy ideas that come to you, or your one great idea that comes to you, running that through your core values. Does it match? And I'm not going to have you do that right now, but I highly recommend finding those 3 to 5 values that matter the most to you. You can Google the word value list, and it will pull up lists of values and things you've never even thought about, and you can whittle that down to 3 to 5, and then identify what those are for you. Then this idea of writing down that Lori had us do with what was coming to our heart, I would recommend taking her heart exercise and sitting with, maybe you get your list down to about 10, and sitting and listening to your heart. My heart, what do you feel about honesty as my core value? Now, just because you don't pick the core values doesn't mean you're not going to live other values beyond those 3 to 5. What are the anchoring values to you that mean this is the truest version of what I want to do in the world? And then running your products and projects all through that and your services. So then we move on to the second one, which I've already touched on a little bit, about running everything through these values. Now, what can get in the way of being authentic? And I'm going to just take a little sidebar on this part, because running everything through your values is a great exercise, especially if you do it from your heart and not just thinking and analyzing it, but being really clear about where that sits for you. But we do have things that get in the way of that, and they can feel very knee-jerk. They can feel almost like they are us. And I refer to this as false authenticity. I'm just going to run a few of these by and see if you recognize any of them. So fear, that's a very basic human experience that can get in the way, where we can become very afraid of showing up with our product or our service. Ego, which has many facets to it. Ego and personality are one of the other ones I think gets in the way the most. And this can look like comparison. Comparing ourselves to everybody else in the world who might be doing this product or this service, or who could do it better than us. That's comparison, right? Perfectionism, not actually ever putting anything out there because it will never be perfect enough. So that can get in the way of our authentic expression. Needing external validation, that looking outside of us to confirm what we already know inside of us. And maybe we just need to have the courage to put out there. That willingness to be seen, to be visible, that Brene Brown was talking about earlier. A lack of follow through. That's one I get to work through a lot. Just that idea of following through on the great ideas that come to you, especially the ones that you feel you have to get outside of you before you're gone from the planet, right? This is you need to get these ideas out. A narrow sense of vision, just because you can't see the full scope of the process for your product, not even starting at step 1, because you can't see how this ends. A fear of failure is part of that. Judgment of yourself and others, and a lack of self-worth, not understanding that innate worth that every one of us possesses. So those are just a few things I've seen get in the way. I put most of those under ego and personality, because there are ways to start to outsmart how ego and personality shows up for us, and it really does get back to listening to your heart. So that's what can get in the way, and having those 3 to 5 values and running everything through it can really help anchor us in staying the course for that follow through. The third line on this slide is the doing your personal work to cultivate your inner knowing and authenticity. So you can only be as authentic in your business as you are with yourself. And so I'm going to walk us through just a very little exercise that I have learned works for me. It may work for you too. I do this actually daily, Monday through Friday, on some Facebook and Instagram lives that I've been doing every morning. And I start off with this process. This is a process I've learned to walk myself through as an entrepreneur. especially when what I think I'm doing is bigger than what I think I can handle. This has helped me to know when I'm coming from that place of those core values, when I know that what I have to offer, I need to do, even if I don't think I'm ready to do it yet. This exercise really helps me to come back to being present, right where I am in myself, and to move forward and do what I need to do for the next step. So I call this being at home. And I don't know if you noticed me because I had my eyes closed, but I'm a 2 hands over my heart kind of girl. So I invite people to have their hands over their heart, since we have been working in this sense. And to me, that sense of connecting with ourselves physically can help us to drop out of our head. That right here where I am is right where I belong. So I'm going to walk you through this. I invite you, everybody, to take a nice deep breath in. I know I need one. And I start with an audible sigh. Because physically, it drops me into my body when I feel my breath. And one more of those. Now just bring your attention to your breath and let it be natural and flowing. With your eyes closed, I'm going to walk you through these 3 points. I belong here. I belong in myself exactly as I am in this moment. I belong in this moment exactly as it is. I belong in this work that is mine to do. I belong in this time. I was made for this time, and this time was made for me. I belong here. I am ready. I am ready for this time and all that it has for me. I am ready for the challenges and lessons that are mine. I am ready to do what is mine to do. And I am ready to let go of what is not mine. I am ready to let go of false responsibility. I am ready. I am not alone. I am not alone because closer than my very breath is love itself. That still small voice, that inner teacher that is guiding and guarding me. I am not alone because I am here with myself, being true and honest with myself. I am not alone because I am with you all, and I am with this world, facing this together. I am not alone. I belong here. I am ready. I am not alone. I invite you to take a nice deep breath. Let whatever is true about that for you take root. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So that is an exercise that I use to tap into my sense of intuition. And I do it every day. And sometimes I do it multiple times a day. I did it right before this webinar. I did it internally right before my time to talk. I was so grateful to have that opportunity with Lori, inviting me to sit back and let myself feel held. And that's one thing I would add to this, is that if you're sitting in a chair when you're doing an exercise like this, if you can tune into allowing yourself to be held, to really feel supported, to put down the efforting that we have to figure things out, especially, I don't know about you, but when I realized for the first time I was technically an entrepreneur, I about ran the other direction, because that was a word that I was like, no, I'm not good enough for that, or smart enough, or educated enough, or whatever. And yet I learned by watching lots of other entrepreneurs, mostly men, they did things way before they were ready. They said things they didn't have authority to say. And I started to realize, like, oh, there's kind of an illusion about what it is to be good enough to be a business person or an entrepreneur. And really the truth is to step into the work that is ours to do. Then what we need shows up as we go. And in number 4, this is a big part of this. Learning how to say no is the part I'm starting with in that one, because that has been very challenging for me. But getting clear about what my authentic yes is, my why, those core values for what I'm doing, allows me to let go of what doesn't fit those specific values that have become so clear to me. It doesn't mean the things I say no to are not worthy of time and attention and energy. It's just not the right time for my time, attention, and energy to go towards that because of my yes needing that time, attention, and energy, my authentic yes. So knowing what your yes is helps you say no, and say no often. I say this as a yes person. Lori and Jamie both know me. Number of times I have to run my schedule through, okay, so where am I with this and my values, my why? Are these my things to do? Is this mine? If it isn't, I can put it down. Is this mine, heart? My heart? Is this activity mine? That's a beautiful practice to get into. And lastly, getting clear about your target market. So again, learning from lots of male and very masculine entrepreneurs, I've learned a lot that has been helpful for overriding any sense of not being worthy or ready or enough to do what is mine to do. And one of the things I learned about was getting very clear that I don't need to grow a thick skin, which is what we talk about. When I know my authentic yes, when I know those core values, when I'm being true to what I hear is mine, I can stand in that and understand that those people I am supposed to reach are ready for me. And anybody who isn't, even if they come across as haters, as my teenage friends like to say, if they come across in that way, then they're not my target market, and it's okay to let it go. So those, especially as a coach, there are so many different ways to be a coach in this world. And as somebody looking for a coach, you need to find the people who are speaking your language, who are meeting you where you are. So there is this no need to be competitive, right? You have something, whatever your service is, and you can know your target market and go for them. So back to where I was talking about this male entrepreneur, he said, love me or hate me, just don't be indifferent. And he taught me that if people are saying what you're saying is ludicrous, it's crazy, you're smoking something, whatever, then they're not my target market, and it's okay. I have opinions and beliefs. It's none of my business what people think about me. My business is being authentic and true and showing up in the world knowing that who that's supposed to meet and bless and help progress, those are the people that will come. And so that final piece of being true to your message by knowing your authentic message and then letting that speak to your market. So that is what I have with those 5 pieces to help us to be truer and more authentic in work as entrepreneurs. The last thing that I'll say is that authenticity is not a static state of being. Oprah said that Maya Angelou once told her, when you know better, you do better. This is a lifelong process. Be true to what you know right now, knowing we're going to learn and grow and expand in our understanding of things all the time. And to not be concerned about, if I show up this way now, that you can't change directions later. Being authentic to yourself is knowing what your heart is saying right now. So learning to tune into that in the moment, not a destination. It is a practice of touching base with yourself every day. And that is what I have for you on authenticity. Thank you.
Whoops. So, Heather, that was beautiful. And Lori, that was also beautiful. And you both brought tears to my eyes. So thank you both. I wanted to share Heather's quote from her blog. And I think the big thing here is authenticity is even more critical, I believe, not just for all the reasons we already shared, but with the COVID pandemic, customers' trust really comes into play, and it's even more critical because authentic businesses ensure trust. So really thoughtfully consider that. Now, as we promised, I think we went 6 minutes over, but we're offering a chance now for you to share in your questions and answers. But more importantly, do you have stories that you would like to share with us? We're only a small group. I think I made it so we could all see who's here. And I'm not sure who M. Wexler is, but I would like to unmute you because I have a hand and a question. So I'm going to unmute you for you to please share your question or story.
I actually, Jamie, think I had my hand still raised from earlier at the beginning of the program that I could hear you all. But now that I am unmuted, I just want to share my gratitude and appreciation for everything that the three of you have been sharing with us. It's incredibly inspiring, and my hand is on my heart as I'm saying this, Lori. So, I feel that it's from that space. So thank you so much for everything that you are sharing with us, sharing yourselves with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other stories, questions? Mama, you got to be on there, Mom. You have to have a story or a question. My mom is my inspiring person.
Oh, Lane's got something.
Lane? Okay, I'm going to unmute Lane.
Hi, you guys. Thank you for sharing. It's an absolute treat to have all of you in the same room. And it's just a really, really good thing for me to be listening to this as somebody who is constantly pivoting for life on the move. You know, we're regularly moving. We're regularly every few years as a military family. And so I'm just really grateful for this, because one of my kind of big pivots was taking ownership a little bit of my talents. I'm not quite there yet. I'm on my way, but taking ownership to kind of do more of a consulting business, even as we move from place to place to place. So I was just, you know, I guess that's more of just a thanks to you guys, because this is good moving forward as kind of a solo entrepreneur, and just figuring out how to best serve people. I just loved that idea of really honing into those values and listening to the heart. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You know, one of the things I'll share, Jamie, while people
Okay.
are finding their courage. It has to do, we lost Heather, I think. It has to do with something that Heather shared when she talked about the different like ways to step into your authenticity. And one of the questions that comes up for us, right, is around, sorry, I'm distracted because I can't see her now. Heather, we can't see you anymore if you're still there. I want to see you.
I'm trying to find her myself.
Yeah. So she talked about, you know, like, who am I? Kind of who am I to be doing this, right? That like owning our purpose and what we're supposed to be doing. And Greg Braden tells this really fun story about, and Jamie, interrupt me if someone raises their hand, but he tells this fun story about this famous musician that he knows, and he won't say who because it was someone that we would all recognize, and he doesn't want to be that kind of person. But they had this song come to them. And it was just one day they like sat down and wrote this entire song. And so Greg Braden kept seeing him and saying, hey, are you ready to share that song yet? And this musician kept saying, no, it's not ready. And I guess this is what brought it up when Heather was talking about perfectionism. No, it's not ready. The song's not ready. The song's not ready. So this went on for 2 years. And one day they turned on the radio and someone else had recorded the song. And the guy pivot, he said, how did they get my song, right? And the wisdom and the knowing and the understanding is that all these ideas that are coming to us right now, everything we're being asked to do, how we're being invited to step forward, already lives in this space that we connect to from our hearts. So if there's something that you're being asked to bring forward, that invitation isn't only coming through for you, it's coming through for others as well. So the opportunity is yours to embrace it and say, yes, I accept this, and I want to I know that it's being given to me and being asked of me because I have what it takes to bring it to life and to bring it forward. And it's just a really important time to start to listen and pay attention and trust that what we're feeling we want to do is being handed to us because we know how to do it.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah.
And I actually have Lee Kramer, who is a wonderful soul. Lee, can you share something?
Hi, Jamie. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, hello. Yeah. I'm in Nebraska, actually, and I'm not a small business person, but I'm really excited to hear about your stories and experiences. And as somebody who's probably at home, like most everybody else, it's just nice to hear people talk from a place of vulnerability and honesty about your experience right now, because I know sometimes it just feels pretty isolating to be either alone with your thoughts or just kind of feel like I don't know, you can't connect with other people's experiences. So I've just really enjoyed hearing all of you speak today. So thank you.
Thank you, Lee. So I have a not pretty story. It's a vulnerable story about myself, why you guys get the courage to have some maybe good news story. We, as all of us, we're experiencing COVID kind of in disbelief, where you could see it coming across the world, but there were so many people sharing that it's just like the flu and, you know, all of those things. And so I was preparing actually for this Power of We was going to be a full day online leadership class not online, actually at Mount Princeton Hot Springs. And I was very focused on all of that. And then March 11th, the governor called a state of emergency. And then March 13th, the president did. And March 15th, I got really sick with the worst flu I've ever had in my whole life. And this was at the same time everyone in businesses were closing. You know, it was an urgent time for small businesses. And I'm older, as I have mentioned before. And so I have this fundamental essence in my soul, this work ethic that you will keep going. And then I do, in a weird way, want to save the world, even though I have no ability to do that. And so even though I was very, very sick, I continued to work. And I worked 40 hours that week, very, very sick. The second week, very, very sick, worked way more than 40 hours. And then the next week, still sick, more than that. And at the same time, for small businesses, the EIDL loan came out, the urgent need to help small businesses. And so it was my total focus. And lo and behold, I got very tired. I was already sick. The programs weren't working. They weren't helping. There was so many businesses that needed help, and I'm very empathetic. I feel people, I feel the pain. And so it wasn't pretty. And some people, because all of us are going through this at the same time, started saying, well, SBDC is not supporting, you've ruined your chance of showing that you could help because the EIDL program wasn't working and the PPP program wasn't working. And so you've ruined all your credibility. And I did all the characteristics. Lori, I think in another session, we'll talk about feminine traits and masculine traits, and feminine strengths and feminine weaknesses and masculine weaknesses. And so I engaged in this really bad confrontation with my feminine really insecurities, and I got indignant. I wrote about it. When one of my bosses, I have 3, sent me a note and said, "You can write those things, Jamie, but you should never send them." And so I think I went through those stages of grief pretty quickly. But it took me until I got past the 3 weeks of being sick and another couple of weeks to just get out of my head and trying to fix it, save it, fix, and into, I have no control over this. I can only come with an open heart to try to help as many businesses as I can and be as authentic as I can and not fall into my negative traits because I'm making excuses to do that. So that's kind of my terrible story, but the truth.
Jamie, there's some questions coming through.
Oh, yay.
I wanted to let you guys know that Heather's texting. She doesn't know what happened. Her internet just stopped completely. It's not the Wi-Fi. She's just lost us. So, but I know, Karen, you had your hand raised. Do you still? It's not raised now. So if you still want something to share, just raise your hand again. And I see Michelle, you have here, I'm in a place of pivoting from what I've been doing professionally for many years to something new. I'm curious, how did each of you discover what your offerings would be? i.e., you're aware of the what and the why and are trying to figure out how you bring it into the world. So I know, so one thing, I'm sure if you guys want to have these conversations, deeper conversations, I know Heather would love to continue sharing her thoughts with you guys offline as well. And so Jamie, I think, will probably share how you can connect with us or just through the websites. I know she'll have some beautiful, oh my gosh, there's so many hands now, some beautiful sharing for this as well. But Michelle, quickly, I think that kind of what I shared about that story with Greg Braden and the musician has a lot to do with your question, right? It's tuning into our hearts. It's getting out of our heads and the conversations that keep us small and really listening and trusting what's coming through you and kind of where your passion has always been. And then there are obviously steps, and I'm happy to dive in deeper offline with that if you'd like. But I see Karen and Catherine both have their hands raised.
Do you want to unmute Karen? Or do you want me to?
Sure, I could do it. Oh, you did it.
Okay, Karen, please share.
Hello, beautiful sisters. How are you?
Hello.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. And Jamie, just, you know, a different perspective from a very appreciative person of the SBDC. You guys, I feel, have done a stellar job with all the changes and immense daily changes and everything else. I mean, I am just enamored at how you've kept up with it and gotten the news out to people and businesses and everything. And there's been so much for business owners in this community to take advantage of that were free, you know, and things like that. And it's still, I think this is what I have learned so much in my work and still learning. And I feel that there are so many blessings with this quarantine that have come forth for me of sitting in my heart. And I will tell you, a new term came about during this quarantine for me, and it's called soul sitting, sitting with our soul and really tapping in and getting to know our soul. And I think the thing that really why that hit me is because I've realized through 20 months, these last 20 months and things like that, of really knowing patience and flexibility and things like that with my life, I've realized that during this quarantine, being by myself for the first time since, I was since I was 17, 18 years old. And so I've never been alone. And so this alone time has shown me, and also the real reality that I have not ever lived alone outside of narcissism in my life. And so I am finding a whole new soul of me. And it's really amazing to get acquainted with my authentic self and things like that. And so speaking from the heart and all of that is just really where I'm at. And then just redirecting, because I know my business it's going to change, and I don't have a pulse on that yet. And so I'm just allowing to be in the flow and let things present themselves and that sort of thing. But I am learning new therapies and technologies and all that kind of stuff that can take me in different directions. And so I'm sitting with my heart, sitting with my soul, and I'm listening. And if that is one thing, and I can only hope that part of this quarantine, and my guides have called it a retreat, be in retreat, soul sit, and things like that. And yes, it's been hard on people, and I so appreciate all of you that have had to work through this whole thing. And part of it is, Jamie, and I wish you would have had the opportunity, is to, because I feel we've created a humanity and a society that we have to keep going 90 miles an hour regardless of how we feel and things like that, instead of stepping back and saying, no, I need to take care of me. Can somebody else step in? And so I'm sorry that you didn't get to do that. I've worked through this retreat time with many of my clients through hair analysis, DNA, and things like that, because there are, many of you who have continued to work, and that stress and everything has taken a toll. And so I'm happy that I was able to be of assistance and things like that. And so I so appreciate you guys doing this. Next, you're having another one next month, correct?
We are, and I'll share that in a minute.
Okay, and you're recording these, because next month I won't be able to sit and attend during the live feed, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, I hope I am. It's my first go-to meeting.
All right.
And I see that we have Catherine. So Catherine, would you like to share something?
My name is Katie. I'm sorry, that's my more formal name. And I started, I wanted to get on with this group because I started a CPR training company. I'm an instructor, so it's a solo company, and I started it in December. I left the state of Colorado. I worked for the Department of Labor for 5 years. And so I'm struggling between survivor's guilt. Like everybody's working and taking all these unemployment claims, and I should be there helping, and I'm not. And then the excitement, I'm trying to regain the excitement of starting my new company. So I just wanted to kind of network with you guys and get to know you and say hello and introduce myself. And I also wanted to share something. My last week with the state, we went to this conference in Pueblo, and there was this trainer that was just phenomenal, but he shared something, and it kind of speaks to the thing we're talking about vulnerability. And so he asked 140 of us in the crowd how many of us could paint him a picture, and 5 of us raised our hands. And he said, now wait a second, if I asked you in 4th grade how many of you could paint a picture, it would be all of you, right? And we're like, well, yeah, of course, we can all paint a picture, right? So it talked about how we're not willing to be vulnerable, because he might have called on us. And if we couldn't paint a picture, we weren't good at it, he'd call us up to the front and we'd have to paint an awful picture. But it's about being vulnerable, and especially at this time, we have to be brave during this time, and we have to be vulnerable because it's a very scary time. But know that we can paint a picture. We can. It might not be the best because we're not an artist per se, but we can all paint a picture. So just get out there, be brave, be cautious, So I'm trying to reinvent myself, but it is a scary time. And thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And Heather's back. If anybody has any questions.
Volunteered you to coach for everybody. You didn't miss it.
Yes.
Not a good time to take lunch. I just got really hungry. Sorry about that.
I just told everybody they should email you and you're ready.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that she's finished with lunch, we're actually concluding. So please continue to send emails or questions that you can call. We have the phone number and all these slide decks. Both Lori and Heather's websites are on the slide decks. And you can always reach out to me and say, how do I get a hold of them? I wanted to end with sharing that we, besides doing more of these series, which is 8 or 7 series, we are offering some business training as well. So first, as we're talking about the new, the Power of We series, our next session, webinar-wise, is June 15th. And Lori and Heather will be joining us again because there's a continuation of this story. But then we'll have a diversity of speakers. And so Jenna Fingston is joining us, Robin Vega, Sydney Schnur, Stephanie Amend from Salida, Delaney Keaton with Startup Colorado, and Taylor Grande with Startup Colorado. And we also welcome your ideas of other presenters and speakers that you think would be a great contribution to this Power of We. And we hope that we can break out into smaller groups too and have discussion groups and those types of things. So we look forward to hearing what you think about furthering this process and movement. Next, in the business series, we actually have our first session tomorrow about talent optimization, and Michelle Hadi will be speaking on this. And she was really focusing on how to address talent during COVID. She was is a counselor of ours and very focused on unemployment support that we offered, and so has a lot of expertise in the unemployment and PPP side of business. And then Cheryl Mahaffey, who actually started Bongo Billy's years ago at Mother's Bistro, will be talking about operations from the inside out on May 26th. And then Leanne Presley will be talking about accessing customers' changing needs. As we've talked about today, we've all changed with this pandemic for success. So I hope you'll join us for those free webinars. We will record those as well. And I don't know if Lori or Heather, you have any closing remarks?
Just trust.
Yes.
Go here. All of your questions that are going to surface as you move through your day, just go here, you know. And Heather, I know that Michelle had asked if there was some way to gain access to the meditation that you shared. I don't know if that's something that you can make available to people, but
yes,
it's a tool gathering time.
Yes. Well, thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month and talking to you in between. Thank you.
Thanks all. Did she end it?
I think you did. Are we? It's so funny because we're recording. We still get to stay on.
I think there's still people on too. It's like
No,
Sue might be on.
Really?
Cheryl, do you still have attendees?
Oh, it says we have 7. Yes. Oh, hi, ladies. We can have our own little thing here. I guess we should probably end. We're learning new technology. You all know how that is.
All right, I'm quitting.